Welcome to Lesson 8 of the Learning Designer's Playbook. In this lesson, we'll take an important step forward. Up to now, we've focused on psychology, understanding how adults learn, how they stay motivated, and how they process information. But knowledge of psychology alone is not enough. It has to connect to something bigger. That's where strategy comes in. Strategy takes what we know about learners and ensures it aligns with organizational goals, business outcomes, and measurable results. Think of it as building a bridge between science and practice. On one side, you have the theories and principles of human learning. On the other, you have the real-world challenges of training in organizations. Our role as designers is to make that bridge strong enough for ideas to travel across. In this session, we'll explore why strategy matters, how psychology feeds into it, and what practical tools help us connect the dots. By the end, you'll see how the science of learning becomes the foundation for a strategy that drives results. And you'll be prepared to transition into Section 2, where we explore needs assessment and organizational analysis. Let's begin with our objectives for this lesson. First, you'll learn how to connect insights from psychology, such as attention, motivation, and memory, to real instructional design strategies. Second, you'll see how to apply these scientific insights to everyday design choices like pacing, reinforcement, and engagement activities. Third, you'll gain a clear understanding of why strategy is essential for training effectiveness. It's not just about creating engaging content, it's about aligning with business goals and producing measurable results. And finally, this lesson prepares you for Section 2, where we'll move into needs assessment and strategic planning. These objectives are designed to keep us focused on the big picture while still giving you actionable takeaways. As we go through the slides, keep in mind how these goals connect to your own projects. Think about the challenges you face in designing training and how a strong bridge between psychology and strategy could help solve them. Before we go further, let's briefly recap Lesson 7. Last time, we studied the ARCS model of motivation, attention, relevance, confidence, and satisfaction. Each of these components plays a vital role in learner engagement. We learned that attention must be captured and sustained, relevance must be established so learners see the value, confidence must be nurtured so learners believe they can succeed, and satisfaction must be delivered so learners feel rewarded. The key takeaway was simple. Motivation doesn't happen automatically. It must be intentionally designed into the learning experience. Without motivation, even the best content can fail. This recap matters because as we move into strategy, we'll see how motivation isn't just an individual factor. It connects directly to business outcomes. Understanding ARCS equips us with a foundation for strategic thinking. Why does strategy matter so much? The truth is, understanding learning science is incredibly valuable, but science alone is not enough. You can design content that perfectly aligns with psychological principles, but if it doesn't align with organizational goals, it won't create impact. Strategy is what drives alignment. It ensures that training initiatives support business needs, not just learner preferences. Without strategy, training risks becoming a wasted effort, well-designed in theory but irrelevant in practice. Imagine a program that's engaging, memorable, and even fun, but fails to improve performance or support company objectives. That's what happens when strategy is missing. As instructional designers, we're responsible for building training that not only respects how people learn, but also serves the organization's mission. That's why this lesson is about making the connection between science and strategy crystal clear. Here's where psychology meets strategy in practice. Let's take attention. Research shows us that people have natural attention spans that fluctuate. Strategically, this means we design pacing carefully, using breaks, interactive moments, and varied delivery methods. Now consider cognitive load. Science tells us that learners can only process so much at once. Strategically, we manage complexity by sequencing information, scaffolding content, and spacing practice. Finally, motivation. We know motivated learners retain more. Strategically, this means we design reinforcement opportunities, feedback systems, and recognition moments that keep learners engaged. Each principle of psychology becomes a design decision when it's applied strategically. This slide is the essence of our bridge. Psychology gives us the insights. Strategy tells us how to use them effectively. To successfully connect psychology and strategy, we need what I call the bridge mindset. The bridge mindset means thinking in two directions at once. On one side, we're always considering the learner, what keeps their attention, how they stay motivated, and how they retain knowledge. That's the micro level, the human perspective. On the other side, we're looking at organizational goals. What performance outcomes are needed, what skills drive business success, and how training supports larger strategies. That's the macro level. Too often, instructional designers focus heavily on one side and neglect the other. A program might be learner-friendly, but miss the mark on business goals. Or it might align with organizational strategy but fail to engage learners. The bridge mindset prevents this imbalance. As designers, we build the link between the micro and macro. We ensure that learning science doesn't just live in a textbook, it translates into organizational impact. With this mindset, every design choice becomes intentional, serving both the learner and the business. Attention is one of the most studied aspects of psychology, and it has direct implications for strategy. Research shows that adults can sustain focused attention for limited periods, often around 10 to 20 minutes, depending on the task. Strategically, this means we can't design long stretches of passive instruction without expecting attention to drop. Instead, we build in breaks, interaction, and variety. That could mean alternating between video, discussion, and activity. It could mean pausing for quick knowledge checks or group reflection. From a strategic perspective, planning around attention is about more than learner comfort. It's about maintaining effectiveness. Fatigue reduces retention and lowers ROI. A well-paced session respects natural attention cycles and prevents wasted time. It's a small example of how a psychology principle translates directly into strategic design. Motivation is not just about getting learners interested. It directly connects to business performance. When learners feel motivated, they are more likely to apply what they've learned on the job. Confidence is especially important here. A confident learner doesn't just know the material, they believe they can use it successfully in their workplace. Strategically, this means we design training that builds confidence through guided practice, feedback, and achievable challenges. When learners feel competent, they perform better. That improved performance translates into measurable business results. This is why motivation must be seen as more than a soft skill. It's a driver of workplace outcomes. When we design training that motivates, we're not just engaging learners. We're contributing to the organization's bottom line. The ARCS model reminds us that satisfaction and relevance matter too, and strategically, they help learners see the value of applying skills at work. Motivation bridges the gap between learning in the classroom and results in the workplace. Retention is where the rubber meets the road. If learners forget what they've been taught, then even the best design training has failed. But when retention is strong, the organization sees real results. Knowledge transfer, taking what was learned in training and applying it on the job, drives ROI. Strategically, this is why reinforcement and practice are so important. We design follow-ups, reminders, and opportunities to apply learning. Retention makes training stick, and sticky training creates business value. A program with high retention is one that reduces errors, improves efficiency, and supports company goals. Measuring ROI becomes easier when retention and transfer are strong. This is the business case for using psychology and strategy. It's not just good teaching, it's good business. Cognitive load is another psychological principle with direct strategic implications. Adults can only process so much information at once. Overload happens when training tries to do too much, too fast. Strategically, we prevent this by sequencing content carefully. We introduce information step by step, building from simple to complex. We pace lessons so learners have time to process, reflect, and practice. This isn't just good for learners. It's smart use of resources. Overloaded training wastes time because learners don't retain it. Sequencing ensures that effort pays off, both for the learner and the business. From a strategy perspective, cognitive load management is about efficiency. It ensures that training sessions are structured in a way that maximizes retention without burning out participants. When you manage cognitive load well, you increase both effectiveness and impact. This is another example of how science translates directly into strategic design decisions. Now let's talk about common mistakes that can derail training. The first mistake is skipping strategy. Sometimes designers get excited about applying psychology and building engaging activities, but they forget to connect those activities to organizational goals. The result is training that's fun but ineffective. The second mistake is ignoring psychology. On the flip side, some programs focus only on business outcomes, cramming in content without considering attention spans, motivation, or retention. That kind of training may check boxes for leadership, but it often fails with learners. The third mistake is assuming one-size-fits-all training. Every audience, every business challenge, and every context is different. Copy-paste solutions rarely work. The strategic designer avoids these traps by balancing science with strategy. This balance keeps the training relevant, effective, and aligned with what both learners and organizations need. Remember, avoiding mistakes is just as important as applying best practices. Let's look at two case studies that illustrate the difference strategy makes. In the first case, a company rolled out a lengthy training program without any real strategy. The sessions were well produced and the content was engaging, but the design ignored attention spans and offered no reinforcement. Learners quickly forgot the material and performance didn't improve. Leadership questioned the value of the training and morale declined. Now compare that to the second case. Another company used the same psychological principles, but they applied them strategically. They aligned the training with specific performance goals, sequenced content to prevent overload, and built-in reinforcement activities. Learners stayed engaged, retained knowledge, and applied it at work. Leadership saw measurable improvements, from fewer errors to higher productivity. This case shows that psychology plus strategy creates success. The difference isn't in the tools, it's in how they're used. To make the bridge between psychology and strategy more practical, let's look at three simple tools. First, an attention checklist. This tool reminds designers to plan pacing, insert breaks, and alternate methods every 10 to 20 minutes. Second, an alignment tool for motivation. It prompts us to ask, is this activity connected to business goals? Does it build confidence? Does it reinforce relevance? Third, a reinforcement plan for retention. This tool ensures that training doesn't end when the session ends. It includes reminders, practice opportunities, and post-training support. Together, these tools provide a framework for turning theory into action. They help us design training that honors psychology while staying strategically aligned. And because they're simple, they can be applied to almost any project. Now it's time for reflection. Take a moment to think about your current projects or a recent training you've worked on. How could psychology principles be applied more strategically? For example, are you designing pacing with attention spans in mind? Are you building confidence as part of motivation, not just delivering content? Are you reinforcing key concepts to improve retention? Pick one project that comes to mind. Identify where the gaps are between psychology and strategy. Then decide on one concrete step you could take to close that gap. It could be something as simple as adding a knowledge check, creating a pacing plan, or aligning an activity more clearly with a business goal. Reflection isn't just about thinking, it's about choosing an action. That's what makes this activity valuable. The bridge between psychology and strategy starts with your next design choice. As we wrap up this section, it's time to look ahead. The first major step in applying strategy is needs assessment. This is where we analyze organizational goals, identify skill gaps, and plan resources. Psychology continues to play a role here because understanding learners helps us ask the right questions and interpret the right data. Needs assessment ensures that training design isn't based on guesswork, but on real evidence. It's the foundation of strategic design. Without it, training risks being misaligned or unnecessary. In the next lesson, we'll walk through a clear three-step process for needs assessment. For now, remember that needs assessment is the bridge from learning science to organizational strategy. It's where we begin to connect people, performance, and business outcomes. One of the most important books for anyone seeking to better understand disability inclusion is Demystifying Disability: What to Know, What to Say, and How to Be an Ally by Emily Ladau. This book is approachable, practical, and written with lived experience at its core. Ladau does a wonderful job of addressing the questions many people have about disability but are often afraid to ask. She explains concepts in a clear, respectful, and engaging way that makes disability inclusion less intimidating and more actionable. The book tackles everything from respectful language to common myths, offering readers concrete guidance for building awareness. It emphasizes that disability inclusion is not about perfection, but about being willing to learn, listen, and adapt. What makes this resource so valuable is its balance of personal stories and practical advice. For leaders, it provides insights into how to create more supportive and respectful environments. For colleagues, it offers tools to be better allies and more understanding teammates. For organizations, it provides a roadmap toward moving from compliance to true equity. Ladau's emphasis on respect and empowerment aligns beautifully with the principles we've discussed in this session. The book also encourages us to embrace disability as part of human diversity, not as something separate or less than. It's highly recommended for anyone serious about advancing disability inclusion in their workplace and beyond. Let's take a moment to recap the key concepts from this lesson. We started by revisiting attention, motivation, and retention, the core psychology principles behind effective learning. We then explored how strategy ensures those principles are applied in alignment with business goals. The bridge between the two is what makes instructional design truly impactful. Without psychology, training feels mechanical and forgettable. Without strategy, training may be engaging but disconnected from results. Together, they create a design approach that is both human-centered and business-focused. We also identified common mistakes to avoid, such as skipping strategy, ignoring psychology, or assuming one size fits all. Through case studies, we saw how the same tools can either fail or succeed depending on how they're applied. Finally, we introduced tools, reflections, and a recommended resource to help you turn theory into practice. This recap highlights the essence of bridging science with strategy. As instructional designers, there are a few guiding principles we can take away from this lesson. First, balance learning science with strategy. Always ask yourself, is this activity backed by psychology, and does it align with organizational goals? Second, avoid common pitfalls. Don't let training become either too academic or too business-focused. Third, apply practical tools consistently. Even small tools like pacing checklists or reinforcement plans make a measurable difference. Fourth, reflect and adjust. No training program is perfect the first time. Learners change, businesses evolve, and strategies must adapt. Reflection ensures continuous improvement. By following these principles, you'll not only design effective training, you'll also build credibility as a designer who bridges science and business strategy. That's the kind of professional who makes a lasting impact. We've now completed our exploration of how to bridge psychology and strategy. You've seen how attention, motivation, and retention connect to organizational goals through thoughtful design choices. You've learned how to avoid common mistakes, apply simple tools, and reflect on your own projects. You've also added a valuable resource to your professional library. The key takeaway is this: when you connect learning science with strategic alignment, your training becomes more effective, memorable, and impactful. That's the bridge that transforms instructional design into a driver of performance. In our next lesson, we'll move into Section 2, which begins with the three-step process for needs assessment. This is where strategy really takes shape through analysis and planning. Keep building your toolkit, and remember, every design choice you make can either strengthen or weaken the bridge. Choose wisely, and you'll continue to grow as a learning professional.